Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of DVTV. I'm your host, Tony Reale. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Canon XA10. Now this is a new Canon camera that just came out a couple months ago, and it's been actually very popular. It's kind of hard to get a hold of because of its unique position. It's basically a size of a consumer camera, but it's got the sensor of some of the more professional cameras that Canon makes. So how does it perform? Well, we've been using this for our NAB coverage or Cinegear coverage, and even right now we're using this for our DVTV show. I've been very impressed with it, and I want to go over some of the pro features that I found. The pros are, first of all, image quality. I've been very impressed with the image quality. I used to have the Canon XA10, and the XA10 had good overall image in a well-lit situation, but as soon as you start getting to medium lighting, average indoor lighting without any specialty lighting coming in, things started to suffer really quickly. You had a lot of grain that came in, and overall it was just not a great image. But the XA10 really surpassed my expectations in this area. You know, using a 5D Mark II, knowing that the incredible light sensitivity that it has, the XA10 really does, in my opinion, rival that in most situations. Again, I don't use the XA10 for professional video film shoots. I primarily use it for our shows and stuff like that. But when we were at NAB, there are situations where we're in low light, for like at the Canon booth and other areas where there was just dim lighting, and the XA10 really shined. We didn't have to even use our LED light very often, except for areas where we just didn't have any light pointed at the person. So image quality, light sensitivity were a big plus. Another big advantage, of course, is the size. Now, we talked about the fact that this is basically a consumer body with a professional sensor in it. And the cool thing is that you can actually separate the XLR inputs from the camera and actually have it look like a consumer camera. This is nice if you just want to be in a location where you want to be inconspicuous, whether you're shooting a wedding, whether you're shooting behind the scenes stuff, whatever it may be. You want to have that pro sensor, you want to get that great image quality, but you want to be fairly inconspicuous. Now the size can be a disadvantage if you want to not have that jiggle that happens when you're holding your hand out, but it's easy to use a shoulder rig. We use a shoulder rig for our NAB coverage, and this proved very easy, and it was very modular, so we could take the shoulder rig, I could stick it in my suitcase, and just have a very small camera bag for most of our coverage. The other pro I found was the media storage options. It's got a built-in 64 gig hard drive, so right off the bat, you don't even need to necessarily bring in additional storage. But it actually has 2 SD memory card slots as well. So basically, you've got tons of space. You can record for quite a while. At its lowest bit rate, which is 5 megabits a second, you can record for 24 hours. That's ridiculous. Now, I record at 7 megabits just because I want to have that middle range, whether I might want to use it for something higher end and maintain that 1080p quality. But honestly, the 7 megabits to 5 megabits are more than enough for YouTube videos. And the nice thing about recording at a lower bit rate is that you don't have these massive files on your hard drive all the time. So you can archive stuff and not take up a ton of hard drive space. I literally have recorded from day one all my NAB coverage, my Cinegear coverage, and I still have room on the built-in hard drive, and I haven't used an SD card yet. So that is just a huge plus, that ability to record on there and have just tons of space. And now, not everything can be perfect, and this camera does have a few cons that I want to go over. First of all is the autofocus. Now, overall it's pretty good, but if you try to stay locked on something and you start zooming in and out, or if you do any sort of rapid movement, like quick movements back and forth, the autofocus has a tendency to search and not find the object that you're looking for. Now, it does have a cool feature where you can basically touch a focus point and basically tell it where you want. It does, of course, have facial tracking, but if you want to track like in my hand or an object or something like that, you can use that, and that works okay. But again, we found when we were doing our NAB coverage, if we try to zoom in, zoom out, the autofocus was just not entirely reliable. Now, this isn't just the XA10. A lot of cameras have this problem. Autofocus isn't perfect, but again, this was an issue. So fortunately, there is a focus ring on the camera, and you can switch to manual and be able to control your focus that way. So that is a plus. But again, the autofocus did occasionally make life a little bit more difficult for us. Now, talking about the focus ring, another thing that I didn't like about this camera entirely was the manual controls. Now, I knew going in that I wasn't going to be getting the manual controls that I was used to on my XA10 or on the higher end cameras from Canon, like the XF100 or the XF300. But still, it is something that I kind of miss. Having the focus ring is nice. and having the level of manual controls that it have. Basically, most of the manual controls I was used to on the XA10 are on the XA10. They're just buried in a menu, and they're not as quick and easy to get to. If you remember XA10, there's buttons everywhere, and they're easily able to select, versus I got to go through a menu. It's not as quick, and it's just a little bit more difficult. I don't have a separate iris ring and a separate focus ring and a separate zoom ring. I just have one focus ring, and I have to control manual iris and have a zoom or rocker. So again, not the traditional manual controls that you're used to on a professional camera, but it'd be almost impossible to cram it into a camera of this size. And last thing I will mention, as I spoke of before, the camera is menu driven. All the manual controls are buried in a menu, and navigating that menu isn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world. The touch sensitive screen is what controls everything, and it's okay to navigate, but again, it's not as good as maybe a smartphone or something that has a better touch navigation. I would have preferred maybe a button control just to make things a little quicker and easier and more accurate, but again, the 3-inch screen is nice. It's a little cramped for somebody of my hand size, but overall I can use it, but it's just not as nice as, say, some of the menu driven systems of previous cameras. So overall, I'm very happy with this camera. We're going to be using this for quite a while. I like having the small size, I like having the Pro sensor, I like having the ease of use of it, and still being able to have XLR inputs, having all the main controls in there. I think $2,000 is maybe a little bit higher than you would expect, but once you start seeing the image out of this camera, you're going to be happy that you spent the money for it.